Hi everyone, welcome back to our third video in our stone carving series. So I know I'm not done with what I'm doing yet, but I wanted to start kind of explaining how you can take your stone in this more rough phase to getting it to be really highly polished. Okay, so the shine that you're seeing and the smoothness that you're seeing is really coming from the fact that there aren't any grooves in this area of the stone. So all of the tools we've been doing, chisel takes away a lot, rasp takes away less, file takes away even less, and now the sandpaper is going to take even less away. So it's really about just smoothing out that surface. So we're going to do wet sanding for this because we know that the dust is really not great to breathe in. And when we were using our harder tools, we have to use a dry method, but for sanding, with all of the small dust it's going to create, it's really nice to do it in a water bath. Your stone doesn't have to be fully submerged, but we're going to use our sandpaper in a wet state to help with this. Okay, so we have different sandpapers, and just like our tools, we were starting with the most aggressive and abrasive and working our way to the finest with the file. We're going to do the same thing with our sandpaper. So with sandpaper, the numbers, the lower it is, so this is 150, the more abrasive it is. So 150's got a lot of really nice grooves in it. Next one I have is 400. You can see it's a little bit smoother. And then my more extensive one is 600. And this doesn't even feel like sandpaper at all. So what you can do is you can rip off a piece. I'm gonna start with the most abrasive, as I said, and I'm gonna start sanding my space. I'm gonna work on this area because I've already been doing some work. Now, as I mentioned, we're trying to work with it in a wet state, so it kind of creates a chalky powder as you are working. So if you notice that and you can't really see what you're doing, you can always go and kind of dunk it under the water again to see a little bit better. Now, my goal is to kind of go over the whole thing, or the area I'm actively working on, with that 150 sandpaper, the more coarse sandpaper. And I'll know I'm ready to move on when I don't really have any of those little grooves anymore. So for instance, over here, you can still see a lot of grooves. These, if I go in with my 150 sandpaper and really work it, they're still probably gonna be there because they're so deep. So this would be a great place for me to realize I need to let my stone dry, and I need to go back with my file and do a little more filing before doing the sandpaper. I could keep sanding, but it's gonna take me forever to get out some of those deeper grooves. So instead, I'm going to stop there and go back with my file when it's dry. All right, so let's say this area I've completed with the 150 sandpaper. I'm gonna grab my 400 sandpaper, the next one down, and I'm gonna go back to that spot, and I'm going to start sanding that. If you can't see, if you've done enough, remember, add water, get the dust off. In the same way, the chalkiness can build up on your sandpaper, so sometimes you need to kind of rinse that off as well. Okay, once I get a little bit further with it, I can rinse it off. In this case, that area looks really nice. I don't see any grooves shining through, so I feel like I'm ready to move on to my next one, my 600. So I'm taking it, same thing, sanding over the top, rinsing it off. I would probably do a little more to make sure I don't have any grooves, but I feel like I'm almost at that point where I'm done with sanding in that one area. Okay, let's say we're done with sanding, pretend I did it everywhere. Your last step would be to work on polishing. And polishing, you're gonna use a couple different things. Instead of sandpaper, because we're not trying to take away, we're trying to compress and smooth. We're going to use simple felt. So you're using a mix of pressure with the felt. So literally taking a scrap of felt and pressing into your stone. And just from that, you are taking this very soft stone and making more of a finished surface. And then you can also use either, I have a furniture polish, or I have a little bit of beeswax that you can also put on. The big mistake beginners make with this is they'll put way too much on. You really only need the tiniest drop possible. like one little minuscule drop will go a long way. Otherwise, it'll be slimy as you work. So I can go back, rub this polish into the surface with my felt, and then I can leave it for next day to see if I need to do any more touch-ups in that area. And that is our final step, taking our stones, sanding, and polishing.